Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mission 1820. In this week's episode of Have You Ever Wondered? If you're just joining us, we are in a series called Books of the Bible, where we have been giving introductions to each book of the Bible in just 5 minutes or less. So without further ado, let's get to this week's book. This week's introduction is in the Book of Nehemiah. This is the 16th book of the Bible, and it's also the 11th of the 12 historical books that are found in the Old Testament. The name of the book comes from its author, Nehemiah. Now, his name means the Lord is consolation. Nehemiah's main occupation was that of a cupbearer for King Artaxerxes I. This meant that his job was tasting the wine and food for the king to make sure that it wasn't poisoned. The book of Nehemiah, it's a complement to the book of Ezra. And the reason being is because it provides some additional information about the religious and the social reforms that took place in Judah and Jerusalem. The book discusses or talks about the rebuilding of the city walls of Jerusalem, as well as the reestablishment of God's covenant in Israel, while also continuing the story of Israel's return from their Babylonian captivity. Now, Nehemiah was a Hebrew living in Persia when he heard that the temple in Jerusalem was about to be rebuilt. Now, this made him really anxious, and the reason being is he knew that without a reconstructed wall around the temple, there was simply no way that the people could protect themselves. So Nehemiah asked God to use him to rebuild the walls and to save the city, which God did. So, with the blessings and the supplies of King Artaxerxes, Nehemiah was then given permission to return back to Jerusalem, where he's made governor, and then he begins the rebuilding process of the wall, which only takes him 52 days to rebuild. The book was written about 445 to 420 BC by Nehemiah. Now, we know this because when you begin reading the book, you're going to see that it's written in the first person. The book can be divided into two parts, with the first being the reconstruction of the wall. This is covered in chapters 1 through 7. This is the political portion of the book because it recounts the events of Nehemiah's temporary return to Jerusalem from Persia as their governor. The second part is the restoration of the people, and this is covered in chapters 8 through 13. This is the spiritual portion of the book because this is where Ezra leads all the Jews in a renewal ceremony, which included the public reading of Moses' law, or the Torah. Now, the entire book only covers 19 years, from 444 to 425 BC. But although the entire book takes place in just the one city of Jerusalem, there is no shortage of key people in the book, such as Nehemiah and Ezra. You're going to read about Sanballat. Now, he tried to hinder the rebuilding of the wall. You read about Tobiah. He's actually an Ammonite official who also tried to prevent the Jews from rebuilding the wall. Under Nehemiah's leadership, the Jews withstood all the opposition, but they still came together to accomplish their goal. Nehemiah, he led by example as evidence of him giving up the coveted role of cupbearer to the king and his palace. Here, even with all the successes, Nehemiah never claimed any glory for himself, but always giving God the credit for those successes. So let me finish by saying this. As you read the book, watch Nehemiah in action and see the kind of person he was, and determine yourself to be a person on whom God can rely on to act for him in this world today. So I hope that this introduction is going to help get you started in the book of Nehemiah. So God bless, and thanks for watching.